Hello everyone, welcome back to Gardening with the Landscape Connection. My name's Michelle. I live in Northern Illinois, Zone 5. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad you could join us. If you're here, it's because you want to learn about gardening. Today, we are going to talk about dividing and transplanting and the easiest way to do that. So I know some people are really hesitant to dig their stuff up and split it and move it, so I thought I'd talk about that today. I transplant stuff all year long. Now I know you can read all the gardening books and you can go on the internet and they'll say do it in the spring, and that is the easiest time to do it. But as you can see, this is a blue angel hosta and it's a little big, and I missed the window to get it transplanted because I was busy. But I'm still going to get it done now, because what happened was when I put this in, I thought I was getting more shade in this spot than I actually am. How many of you have done that? And by the time I got to the end of last summer, all the leaves on the edge of this were all crisped up and they just looked horrible, and it's just getting too much sun. So what I'm going to do instead is, as you can see, this is my herb garden here. I'm actually going to pull this up. I'm going to plant a patch of chamomile here because I think that's going to do a lot better. And then I'm going to take this, I'm going to dig it up, and then I'm going to split it in two, and I'm going to take it over to the north side. Actually, is that the north side? Yes, the north side bed where I have a big empty hole over there, and I'm going to transplant it over there. I'm actually going to split it into 3 smaller ones, and then I'll have 3 hostas, and they'll all get big and glorious. I love this one because it does have this nice textured leaves. The slugs have a tendency to leave some of the textured ones alone a little bit more, at least here where I live. And these leaves get really big and they're great for leaf casting, and I like to do that with concrete, and we'll do that later in the summer so that you can see how to do that as well. So some tips when it comes time to transplant. Number 1, I either do it the next day after it rained, or I water them the night before. It makes them a little bit easier to get out of the ground. Number 2, it really is a good idea to do it on an overcast day. Now today, it's not really overcast, it's hazy. We're actually getting a smoke haze from all the fires up in British Columbia and Saskatchewan, and there's another little, I don't know if it's Ontario, but up north in Canada, there's a lot of wildfires going on right now, and they are affecting our air quality here all the way in Northern Illinois. And so we have this haze over the sky today instead of brilliant blue sky, but it makes it for a good transplanting day because it does help your plant stress a little bit less. Now, if you get to a point where you want to move something and it hasn't flowered yet and you have to do it right now, go ahead and move it. You probably lose the flowers on it, but you can still move it. Now, what I do is I'll let it flower, and then I will enjoy that, and then I'll cut them back, like cut the flowers off and cut the foliage in half, and then I'll dig it up and move it. And the reason I do that is because I don't want all the energy to go to flowers. When I'm transplanting something or dividing something, I need the energy to go towards root production. So I'm not so worried about what it's going to do this year. I want it to get settled in, grow some roots, and maybe it'll flower if it's something that is later in the summer. But for the most part, I just want it to get nice and healthy and get established this year so that next year it'll be successful in its growth habit. The other thing is, sometimes if I'm transplanting, and this happened all the time when we were landscaping, because you have to landscape through the whole summer. You can't take weeks off while you're waiting for the heat to pass. But there was times where we had jobs where we actually had to create shade on things that we transplanted or that were newly planted, just so that they would stress a little bit less. The other thing you want to do is you want to try and take as much soil that it has in the hole with it to the new hole that you are taking it to. And if you're not ready to put it in the ground, put it in a bucket and keep it in the shade and keep it well watered. The other thing is, after you're done transplanting it, make sure you tamp that soil down around the root ball so that you get good soil to root contact and you get any air pockets out of there. I don't fertilize them right away. I actually wait a couple weeks. They're already freaking out because you moved them. So give them a couple weeks to get acclimated, and then you can feed them. The only other thing I would say that would make your life easier, and I talk about this a lot, is have a sharp shovel. If you have never sharpened your shovel, you will be amazed at how much easier it works if it's sharp. So how do you sharpen a shovel? Well, I use a grinder on mine, and I like to use what's called a king spade, and it's all one piece. It's got a shorter handle on it, and it's got the round, or not the round, but the square edge up here. For me, the size is perfect, the weight is perfect. I think it works better. If I need leverage, I don't have to worry about breaking a wooden handle because I'm trying to get leverage to get something up out of the ground. They edge great. So it's like this multi-purpose tool, and I just love it. So we will sharpen it on a spinning grinder, or if you don't have that, you can use a file. You can buy a coarse file. They're about, you know, this long in the store, and when you sharpen, you go away from the shovel with the file and you just go in one direction, and what you're doing is you're just trying to get an edge on there just like you would with a knife, and that way you've got this nice sharp shovel. I end up sharpening mine 3 to 4 times a year. My landscapers, when I was a landscaper, they used to carry the files around with them in the trucks so that in a pinch they could certainly sharpen their shovel, because they were always digging stuff out and cutting roots and things like that. So a sharp shovel made it go really, really fast when it was time to rip out the landscaping of a job that we were renovating. And I remember going to jobs and homeowners would come out, like they'd go inside to get a cup of coffee and they'd come back out and the bush would be ripped out and they'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe how fast you did that. But sharp tools makes a big difference. So if you've never done that, I highly recommend it. So let's go ahead and get this one dug up, and then I'm going to show you some tricks that you can do so that you don't rip all the leaves on it when you're getting ready to transplant it. Let's say you missed the window, you know, when they were those little bitty nubs. Well, obviously I missed that window, so I'm going to show you how to do that here in just a second. Okay, here we go. Hopefully I don't fall down while I'm trying to get the shovel in here and pull it up. So you want to push your shovel down in there, put your foot on the edge of the shovel, and then just use the shovel for leverage. See, it's already starting to move. And then you want to go around the outer perimeter of your plant and just keep lifting, cutting, and lifting. Cutting and lifting. Oh, and I think I almost got it. Okay. And that's why I love this shovel, because it gives me so much leverage. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got this whole thing now, and I'm going to lift it out of here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on its side. Okay, so now that I have it on its side, instead of splitting it to where I run the shovel like straight up and down like this, I'm actually going to split it on its side like this. That way, it comes apart pretty clean. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. One more. So instead of doing it from the top, I'm doing it from the side. There we go. In you go. It's a pretty big root ball. Okay. Here we go. So I got a nice piece right here. Let me just roll you over, get off my leaves. Okay. So I got a pretty nice piece right here, and I ended up breaking one. I broke one leaf. That's it. So this is going to go on the ground. I'm going to set that right there, and then I'm going to take this one here and I'm going to chop it in half again, so I have 3 pieces. Truck. Okay, here we go. Now this one, I'm going to take it. I got a big hole here, so I want to make sure I don't step in it and trip myself. There we go. All right, so now I got this piece here. And again, I did lose, well, on this one I lost 3. Not too bad. I lost those 3. So now I have another nice hunk right here, see? And I can transplant that right in the ground. And then my 3rd piece, yep. Looks like I lost 3 on that one too. So see? And now I have 3 clean pieces to put into the ground. Okay, so I'll take those over in a little bit and I'll pop them in the ground. Basically, I'm going to dig a hole as big as the root ball is, and then I'm going to backfill them, tamp them in, cover them with mulch, water them in, and then I'm going to wait. And in a couple of weeks, I'll give them some fertilizer, and then I'll just keep them watered through the rest of the season and treat them like a new plant, which might need a little bit more water than an established plant, and that's that. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is an iris. So some things that you dig up in the ground, and I dug these up from a friend's house, and we're going to put them in our cut flower garden. And so what you're looking for with an iris, and let me find one here. Here's one right here. And I got these like a week ago, so they've been sitting in a bag for about a week. And so the foliage died. But see how I got all of these icky other things that were growing around the iris? Well, what's nice about a rhizome is, see, I can pull all of that off, okay? And I can pull all the dirt off, and I can shake any of the weeds that are around it off, because I don't want to replant those weeds into my garden. And then what I'm left is this rhizome right here. And you want to make sure that it's nice and firm, and you can snap them off, okay? And you can make two, and you want to have a nice little root system here. Now, one of the things with iris is that they grow right on the top of the surface. So basically, you just make a shallow trench, and you set these in place and put a little bit of dirt on top, and that's it. But if you have this big, long stem on it, they're going to do this, poink. They're just going to fall over, poink. So what you're going to do, I know you don't want to do this, but this is what you need to do. You're going to cut it into little stubs, just like this, okay? So that you've got just this little grow tip right here, and you can actually make them shorter than that. Okay, you can make them like this, and I just took a pair of scissors and I cut that off. And then you're looking for these to be nice and firm. You don't want holes in them. Check them for borers and things like that. And see, you'll get a big mass like this, and maybe you want to split this mass into smaller pieces. And again, you can get all of that, any weeds off of there. You can cut the stems back, and I'm just cutting them into a bucket here. And you can even trim the roots a little bit so that they fit in the hole a little bit better. And if you don't want this big of a mass, or you see a piece, see this right here, see this one doesn't look as healthy, it looks like it's got some damage, I can just cut that off. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to break it right here, and then I can just snap this piece off, or I can go get my Falcos, but I can snap that off, see, and then I'll just let that form a little scar, and then I'll plant it. So now I've got two smaller ones here, and then I've got this bigger mass right here. Now, these are a little wet, so I want to let them dry out a little bit. It rained, and I had them in a bag in the back, and the bag filled up with dirt, but they're still fine. But you can see here, see, there's little weeds on here. You can see that? I'm going to pull all of that out, because if I don't, those weeds will grow right along with the iris. And the whole point of cleaning them off is so that I don't bring somebody else's weeds into my garden, and I have a nice, clean rhizome to plant. You can do the same thing with a daylily. That's not a rhizome. It's actually a fibrous root, but it's the same thing. It's that nice bulbous bulb or root or whatever. It's a fibrous root. So it stores water in its roots, and that's why it gets all big and fat. And you can actually split those, dig those up, cut them all the way back to little stubs. Those get buried in the ground, but you can get all the weed seed off. Now, one of the things that happens, ooh, this one's really soft. I'm going to pull that one off. One of the things, and so I'll end up cleaning, I have a big mess of them right here. You can see all these. I have all those that I dug up out of my friend's garden, and I'm going to be using them in the cottage garden when we plant those. So I like to plant trade with people, but I always make sure that when I do it, I'm looking for clean plants, and I don't want weeds from somebody else's gardens. Now, with things like this, where you have a rhizome or a fibrous root or a bulb, like this is a bulb here to an Asiatic lily. And what I did was, I still have my little grow points here, and I just cut it back. And I'm going to actually pull them apart because, see, I have two. So I have one growing here, and I can plant this one in the ground. And then I can, oh, look, I have, see, I can take it, and I've got a grow point on this one and a grow point on this one. So any of these, I can clean them off, and then I can replant them in the ground, and they're going to grow. Now, this was in this patch of iris, and so it was a little bonus plant. But when you're transplanting other things that have like more of a thick root system, like that hosta that we dug up, that's something where when I used to landscape, people would tell me, oh, please, I must keep this plant. It was my mother's brother's sister's best friend's, and I must keep it forever. And you're like, really? You're going to pay me to clear all the weeds out of your bed and start all over and make it beautiful, and you want me to put this weed-infested plant back in your bed? Well, I wouldn't waste your money, because you're starting all over again. You're just going to perpetuate more weeds. So if you have something that has weeds growing up through it, and there's no way that you can get the root from that weed stock out, you need to just get rid of it and start over. Or if you can get a little piece of it that doesn't have any of the weed in it, then go ahead and do that. But I don't know why you would want to restart the cycle of those weeds all over again. One of the things that we get asked all the time at the garden center is, how do you control your weeds? And you know, there really is only two ways. You're either going to do it with a chemical, or you're not going to do it with a chemical. So you can either hand pull weeds, and if you get them when they're little enough, you can probably get them with the root. But if you wait too long and they get big and you go to pull them, listen, you'll hear it snap, and then you know that that root is still there and it's going to grow again. Now you can use products like Roundup and things like that. Just be careful with those. They are a chemical and you don't want to absorb it through your skin. Wear the proper PPE or the proper protective equipment or clothing or whatever. I try to organically garden. I do use a few things though. I like to use the Captain Jack's. I use that. But I also will use a pre-emergent like a preen. I use a product called Snapshot. And it goes down in the ground and it stops new weed seed from germinating. It doesn't stop your weeds that are already there. Those are going to come back up. You're either going to pull them, you're going to smother them out, like putting cardboard or something like that on top of them to smother them out. And people are like, landscape fabric. And I'm kind of like, why are you cutting a hole in it? You're going to let all the weeds back up. So they'll find a way. They'll find a way to that little hole you cut in it. So to me, that's just more money that you're spending that you don't need to spend. The only time I ever used landscape fabric as a landscaper was when someone made me, or we were putting down rock. Then I would use it because I didn't want the rock to work its way into the ground. But as far as transplanting goes, you know, again, sunny, cool day. I do it all season long. You can really get yourself a lot of plants that way. But the one thing too is you can get too many of a good thing. And so gift them out, but don't gift out weed infested things. Nobody wants your weed infested plants. So make sure they're clean if you're going to a plant swap or you're throwing them in a box at the end of your driveway and writing free on them because you have 5,000 hostas that you don't know what to do with. I just think that, you know, you can do a lot of different things. I make sure whenever I am giving plants away, they are weed free. But I'm Michelle from the Landscape Connection. This is a little bit just about transplanting and what to do and how to dig them up. And remember, sharpen your shovel because it'll make your life easier. Make sure you do it on a cloudy day, although a sunny day is fine too. You're just going to stress them more. And don't forget to put them back in the ground. I did that one year. I dug up a bunch of sedums and I walked them around with the shovel and put them all in their place, and I forgot to plant like 3 of them. And when I went to do my fall cleanup, they were still sitting there growing, flowering above the soil in their little root ball. You can't do that with very many plants. Probably that would be the only one that would work with. But I don't know. I think that's all I know about dividing and transplanting that will help you. So I'm Michelle from the Landscape Connection. Keep on gardening. Stay tuned for our next video, and we'll see you next time. Bye. I can turn this off.